I love being uncomfortable, and I will spend my days finding situations to put myself in to be uncomfortable, because I think that's where all the good stuff always happens.
If you ever get to that point of thinking, actually, I want to leave, I want to do something different, just let me know right at the beginning. I'm not going to be, your job's not going to be at risk. There's going to be no bitterness. You know, I'll be fully supportive, but it's just so I know and I can start to think about it and a plan.
Stay interviews for us is about saying to people, why are you still here? What is it that keeps you here? What are the things we can learn about that if we were to stop doing, actually those people probably would leave?
It is so interwoven and interlinked that it isn't any singular thing. It's all of these touch points, and it's just conversations, and it's transparency, and it's the openness, and it's having trust, and it's people knowing that there's an environment of trust.
What happens is our chief revenue officer will pinch the best people from our COO. It's generally the kind of way it works. What's great culturally, though, it's completely accepted and completely supported by everybody, including the line managers who are losing the best people.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Best in Class, the Business Excellence podcast. So delighted this week to have Paul Dawson from the Agena Group with me. Paul, welcome to the show.
Hi, Martin. Appreciate the invite. Great to be here today.
No worries. So we had a conversation, it's all a few months ago now, and it was one of the conversations that stuck out to me most out of kind of all my inquiries with people to see if they'd be up for coming on the podcast. And yeah, yours was one that really stood out to me because you've got such, maybe eclectic is the right word, kind of background. You are definitely not sector agnostic. You've worked across multiple different sectors and industries, and I think you said to me at the time, we won't go into it, but you've implemented a lot of kind of huge initiatives that probably mean a lot of people don't like you, at a kind of government wide scale UK type level. But some really, you're a fascinating guy. I mean, we can't get onto it on this podcast, unfortunately, but your background is very, very, very interesting.
I guess it was never designed that way. I think it's fair to say, but it's involved running some pretty unpopular schemes from a general public perspective, but it's always been focused on.
Should we just touch on them? Because we're leaving it really kind of out. People will be going, well, what the hell's he done? And you'll either have a lot of hits on your LinkedIn page, or people will just be going, well, why can't you just tell us? Do you want to just kind of touch? We won't deep dive, but just touch across a couple of them, because they are very, very different.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So to Agena Group, which I founded in 2019, I worked for Capita PLC, which is a large UK outsource organisation, and fronted most of our public sector schemes. So I ran the Criminal Records Bureau, following the incident in Soham, ran and implemented all the congestion charging schemes in London. We paid every GP and every optician on behalf of NHS England. We did medical assessments for departments of work and pensions for people on a personal independence payment, so for invalidity benefits and disability benefits. We used to put tags on people who would be on early release from prison to finish their licence at home. And I also had quite a heavy involvement in our parking management business, which is hence led to my journey into Agena. So yeah, I guess a number of services we all rely on and generally, as a society kind of need in our makeup, but maybe not necessarily the ones which have the best consumer engaging reputation.
Oh, someone's got to do it, haven't they?
Someone does have to do it. Unfortunately, it's kind of ended up being me for a number of them for many years, but yeah.
And I bet you learned a lot along the way. So do you want to, just for the benefit of everybody, do you want to explain kind of what the Agena, I mean, you just alluded to your kind of background around kind of parking. So do you want to explain kind of what it is that Agena does?
Yeah, of course. So Agena Group's a UK operator. We are in the process of expanding our operations into Europe, but we operate today exclusively in the UK, and we manage parking assets on behalf of our clients. So we now look after about 9,300 parking facilities, and that's a range from hospitality, retail, education, healthcare, and our biggest market, which is residential and social housing. and really making sure that those assets are providing maximum value to their landowners or their property managers, and providing a service to those people who use those facilities every day. We're a technology business, we're a services business, and yeah, in our opinion, we provide a very critical service to make sure parking is available for those who need it when they need it. The other side of what we do is we do carry out enforcement. There is a a large number of scenarios where people will park where they find convenient to a mass inconvenience to others. And a great example is people using accessible bays without blue badges because maybe the spaces are a bit bigger, maybe their pride and joy in their vehicle fits in there a little bit better, and they're happy to pay £60, which is the cost of breaching those rules to protect their vehicle. And our job is to make sure those spaces, those facilities, those assets are providing value to their owner and value to their user.
Fair enough. I think you very poignantly explained it as people who very much care for their vehicle. I think we've all definitely seen it. I saw one recently where there was, I think it was a Porsche just pulled up outside the front of a shop, and I was like, went in the shop, there was nobody who looked disabled. It's not to say that they weren't disabled just by appearance, but there was no one in the store that seemed to have any obvious disabilities that would certainly prevent them from driving a Porsche anyway.
No, absolutely. And it's something we all do most days. It's something we always rely on, and it's something we don't like when it leads to someone receiving a fine or enforcement action. But there are about 70 million parking events a day in the UK, and that requires management to keep roadways clear, to keep traffic moving, to keep societies functioning. So for me, it's a really critical, important service, and it's, as I'm sure we'll touch on, it's of everything I've ever done, it's always about how you do it, not necessarily what you do. And I think there's some real consistencies we'll undoubtedly get to.
Perfect. You set me up absolutely beautifully there by saying the how. So that's kind of, the thing that stood out to me when we spoke a few months ago was really you very much talked about the kind of cultural creation that you've done, and I guess that comes from kind of leadership that you've picked up along the way. But we spoke about things about creating a strong organizational culture, and one of the kind of key things that I guess I picked up on, especially as a recruiter, was around the retention of talent. And we just had a quick chat just before we hit the record button then, and we were kind of talking and saying, really, I guess if you to kind of succinctly explain it, it's almost around hiring great people, but then not just accepting that at some point they're going to leave us and we're going to have to rehire. And it's about, oh, hang on, if we've got great people, let's do our damnedest to try and hang on to those great people and do whatever we can through internal mobility, development, but also accept that at some point we might have to part ways. So talk to me about kind of what it is that you do within the business then, around this kind of topic. So what is it that you think you guys do differently to maybe 9 out of 10 cats out there?
Yeah. I think for me, Martin, I think culture's incredibly important. You should be able to feel it in the business. It should be something that's tangible. It should be something that people really understand and experience every day. It shouldn't be a nice policy on a shelf. It shouldn't just be, written in a lovely way, but no one ever actually practices it. So we have a culture in our organization where everyone is quite like-minded. We're very goal orientated. We're very focused on outcomes. We empower people to do their job, and then we support them when they make mistakes. And I think creating an environment where people enjoy stretch, enjoy challenge. I love being uncomfortable, and I will spend my days finding situations to put myself in to be uncomfortable, because I think that's where all the good stuff always happens.
Like podcasts.
Yeah. And I think it's really important to build a culture where that becomes a safe environment for people to step outside of their day-to-day, to put themselves in a situation, to be vulnerable, but to feel really safe. And one of the proudest things of, I guess, leading that organization is I see examples of that every day. I see examples of people wanting to challenge themselves and feeling really safe in doing it. And I think if you can build a culture where there is a high level of accountability, but it's a safe place to test and stretch yourself. I think retention naturally will follow. I think some of the other practical things we will do, we abandoned exit interviews as a technique a while ago, and moved to a process what we call stay interviews. So rather than engaging with an individual who's decided they're leaving and generally has probably ended up in a lot of occasions kind of a negative frame of mind, and now is my time to leave, and you understand and you interview them at that point, say, why are you leaving? For me, it just gives a dynamic which is unhelpful. It gives you lots of content of people in a moment who might have been incredible for 4 years and had a bad 12 months. And you only pick up on those elements which were bad. Stay interviews for us is about saying to people, why are you still here? What is it that keeps you here? What are the things we can learn about that if we were to stop doing, actually those people probably would leave? What are the things that maybe are quite surprising about what we do, which aren't naturally understood by us, but actually cause people to stay? And how do we start as an organization to build and focus more on the reasons why people stay as opposed to the reason why people leave? And that's been incredibly powerful. All of my board directors have a target every month, the number of stay interviews to carry out. It's a proactive conversation. You're not reacting to a resignation and then say, well, let's go and talk to someone about why they're leaving. You're proactively saying, why are you still here? What's causing you to stay?
I think it's brilliant. I've been doing this for over 20 years. I spent 5.5 years in HR. I've done the bulk of my recruitment has been HR focused, and it's not really something that, I'll be honest, I've come up across at all. It feels like quite a novel and unique idea, but it kind of makes sense when you then just talk about it and explain it. Because it's not the same, but I find it quite amusing when people laud recruiters, and they do it because they've just got a job. Now, it might not necessarily have been anything that recruiter did, apart from they had that vacancy, but their service delivery might have been awful. You're just delighted because you've got a new job and it's moved you forward to wherever you wanted to get to. I'm always interested in kind of what's an assessment of a recruiter who didn't get you a job, but what else did they do to support you kind of through that journey? Was that a really good experience in a process that you went through? Of course, getting the job at the end is the cherry on top, but it's that, well, actually, was their service delivery as a recruiter good, or were you just happy with the outcome? And it's the almost inverted version of what you just said. Someone might have had 3.5 great years, but for 6 months it was awful for whatever reason, and maybe they were just bitter about something. And all you're capturing is that. On that point, when do you do those conversations? Then it's obviously an ongoing thing, but at what point, you must diarize them. So how frequently and when did they come up?
Yeah, so like I say, each one of our board directors will have a target for their functional area for X number of interviews per month. They have,
and it's with the director, not the management team, to do
kind of
these.
Director or head of department typically.
Okay.
We are considering whether we actually do it cross-functionally. So should someone in sales ask someone in operations, why are you still here? And that might bring a different dynamic, a different conversation. Yeah. We typically will ask people who've got greater than a year's service, anything up to, obviously however long they've been with the organization. I think what's fascinating to me historically, I always ask somebody why do they want to join? What's it that's attracting you to this organization? What is it about this job? And then we ask them when they leave, why have you left? There's this whole period in the middle called their employment cycle where we never say, why are you staying? And for me, I think some of the best ideas are some of the most basic, and it's just a completely different conversation. And I think it's an incredible way of reinforcing in the business the things that you do well are the reasons why people stay, and you need to constantly refresh your mind on what those things are. People will leave. Typically, people will, find something about their organization, their role that they're doing, which they don't really like. They might then start thinking about moving on. They'll then see a job advert, which maybe offers a bit more money. And generally, lots of people on exit interviews will say, I've left for money. That's never why they started that cycle. And probably isn't the reason why they left, but it was the final point of their decision. Well, I can go and earn more money. And I think it's transformative as an organization. I think you have to coach your managers in how to have that conversation, because equally it's quite a challenging, because not many people are used to doing it, right? So it's not like a skill that you have. So you have to go through a bit of a program to train them, and actually start by asking your heads of departments, why are you still there?
Yeah.
It's interesting. A lot of people when we first started didn't know.
What,
Like,
didn't know why they were there?
yeah, I don't know. And then you get into conversation. Well, what is it you enjoy about your role? What is it you enjoy about the organisation? Then those things come through. I think that's
Again, it goes
that's
back to your
one.
point about putting people into uncomfortable situations. As you say, it's not typically done out there. So people, yeah, I know from my own experience, a lot of people get kind of traumatized and petrified about their annual review or the 6 month review, because the connotation around it is always negative, and actually that shouldn't be the case. It should just be about, let's have a chat. We don't, away from the work desk.
Yeah.
Um, and I think putting people into this scenario, saying, "What do you like about being here?" I guess some will go like, "I need to say something amazing, like scrambling around for something." And it could just be simple stuff like, "I like the culture. I like the
Yeah.
people. I like how you treat us. I like that you as the director are actually talking to me and doing this interview, and it shows that you guys really care about us here. It's not just your directors come and depart the nice car out the front, and then they go and sit in the meeting room, and I'm, you know, the accounts assistant and never see anybody apart from my functional head. Well, actually, I'm getting that conversation with all of the business leaders, and I think it's all of those things that come in through this kind of unique um, kind of intervention that you've created around, why do you like it here? Because we want to know to make sure we're on the right path. And also, have you got any ideas of anything that could make it look, apart
Yeah.
from Pizza Friday, what else can we be doing?
Yeah. And some of the great questions are, what is it you like about our organisation which causes you to stay? Start with that question if it's the only question you ask, and just see where it takes you in the conversation. What is it we would do differently that would cause you to leave? They're just
It's
really
all
open,
open questions as well.
really great questions. I use silence a lot because I think silence is incredibly powerful, particularly in those open questions, and giving people that permission of some time to think. Um, and just if people just wanted to give it a go, just ask those two questions and just see where that conversation takes you. I think everyone can build something unique to their organisation from that starting position.
And it doesn't even need to be formalized, just to if anybody's listening to this and wants to start to embed it into their organization, just drop it in an informal capacity
Exactly.
as you're talking to people, and see kind of where that takes. And are you getting some good responses, and then maybe start to kind of build it into a framework. Cool. I know one of the things that you also do is, when we spoke, kind of around internal mobility and trying to create opportunities for people. Can we explore that a little bit in terms of what you try and do, or kind of what's your ethos behind it?
So we're an organisation of 380 people, and we have some incredible talent in our organisation. We also have some amazing people doing jobs they don't like because it's not their aspiration. It's not why they started their career. I think for me, I would rather retain somebody within my organisation and show opportunity for growth, development, change of roles, than lose them to a competitor for them to experience that themselves. So we have a internal first commitment. There isn't a single job which won't be advertised, and we create an opportunity for people internally to apply for that role, to go through the process and experience the process of understanding where they're at against what we're looking for. We have a commitment to always recruit internally, supported by a development plan if that person isn't quite there, but has the potential to get there. And I think I generally what happens is our chief revenue officer will pinch the best people from our COO. It's generally the kind of way it works. What's great culturally, though, it's completely accepted and completely supported by everybody, including the line managers who are losing the best people. because they stay in the business. And it's, I think we all have a responsibility as a leader to help individuals realize their potential and achieve their ambition of whatever that might be. For some people, that's having a job with no stress, working 9 to 5 and being able to leave the office and not think about work. And if that's your ambition, our job is to give you a role, support you in that. If your ambition is to be our next CEO, then you should absolutely take every opportunity and we should support you on that journey. And I think people know internally they're not constrained to the job they're in. They don't feel trapped by the job they're in. Every job is advertised. Every job is, we will take people through an interview process. We will interview people internally who we know they're not going to be able to fulfill that role. But it's important they go through the experience of the interview, get the feedback, understand the gaps, will commit to a personal development plan. And maybe in 12 months' time, they're a little bit closer, ready to take that role. And we've seen some incredible mobility across our organization. And I think it's a big part of our culture. People feel part of something bigger and know that their functional role is only temporary, because they could go and move from operations to sales. We've just had one of our outstanding, very inspirational team leaders move into an account management role. And I know the individual that person works for is absolutely devastated that she's leaving. But I equally know deep down, he's incredibly proud of the part that he's played in her development and will now watch from a distance on how amazing she'll be in her new role.
Do you have to manage that internally? Because again, we're humans. It's inevitable. We're going to be a degree of resentment and bitterness. You might not want it to lay heavy and be as external, but sometimes you might go home and go, I'm a bit annoyed about this. Like, I've lost one of my best people. I'm happy for them. I'm happy for the team, but it's going to make my life annoying for a little bit. Like, that will happen. It's inevitable. So how do you manage that internally?
I think I think people now just know that's what we do. We made an acquisition.
Again, going back to culture, it's just that's the way it is here, guys.
It's who we are. We made an acquisition 4 or 5 weeks ago. I've spent a lot of time with that business recently. We're trying to encourage people to say, look, there's wider opportunities. Look at those vacancies. Think of that as a trigger to do something different. If you're feeling like you're not being challenged or need more from your working life, Agena's a great place to go and explore that. You don't have to go out to the external market. I think it does need managing. I think there's two choices. The moment someone applies for an internal job is an indication that person's not completely happy in the role they're in, either because they have ambitions to do something different, they have ambitions to do something bigger. And if you don't help them facilitate that, they will just leave the organization. And I would much rather lose all of our best people from one of our teams and retain them in another than lose them external. I think I see that very first application for an internal job just as a trigger to say, this person needs more, will leave us. So how do we facilitate keeping them?
And am I right in assuming for this to work, is there a degree of full transparency around it? So if internal vacancies come out and somebody fancies it, they're quite open with their manager because they know it's a safe environment to do so. And it's also, so like when I had a team, I said right from the beginning, look, if ever, we're a small company, I appreciate you guys probably aren't going to be around forever. But if you ever get to that point of thinking, actually, I want to leave, I want to do something different, just let me know right at the beginning. I'm not going to be, your job's not going to be at risk. There's going to be no bitterness. I'll be fully supportive, but it's just so I know and I can start to think about it and a plan. And that worked really, really well. And the team always then knew it was a safe environment and they were going to be trusted and there wasn't going to be any kind of resentment from it. So I guess that kind of has to happen internally so that the manager starts to absorb it and take it on and think, okay, there might be a chance of me losing this person, or I guess there has to be that transparency there.
Yeah, and everyone internally has to have had the conversation with the line manager that they're applying. I think the key thing for me, Marty, it's about connecting all of those pieces together. So, the annual appraisal, it's a two-way process. It's about development. It's about aspiration. It's about joining that to a conversation about why you're still here. It's about linking that into, I know we have line managers who will say to their team, have you seen this job that's been advertised? Have you not thought about applying? Because sometimes people will need a little push as well. And it's not that they don't want them in their team, but they've had all those other conversations and they think, this is what you wanted. And I might just need to help nudge you towards taking that brave step of maybe moving out of something that you're comfortable in doing. So I think for me, it's not one of those things individually. I think it's how you combine that. It's about intimacy with your employees and understanding them as an individual and their aspiration. We have a large number of people in our organization who do an incredible job and want to leave work at 5 o'clock and come back at 9 o'clock the next day. And they're very happy to do that for the next 5 years. And those are the heart of our organization. Those are the people who deliver the quality of service, run our business day to day. And we couldn't survive without those people who are happy in the role that they're doing. If their environment they're in is something that they enjoy being part of, it's, in my mind, it's absolutely fine to not have an ambition to move in a management or a leadership role or a more technical role or a subject matter expert. Every organization needs those people. For those people who maybe have a different outlook on life, we also need to support them. And I think it's just about understanding people as individuals, and that's about doing all of those things we talked about.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I love it. I absolutely love it because it's just it sounds daft. It's the way it should be. It makes so much common sense. But I think we just through legacy or working for other managers and leaders, where these types of environments just weren't created. It was very cloak and dagger. It was very resentment. It was, no, that's you, stay in your lane. Don't ever look over the garden fence and have any ambition to do anything else. And I completely agree. It is so interwoven and interlinked that it isn't any singular thing. It's all of these touch points, and it's just conversations, and it's transparency, and it's the openness, and it's having trust, and it's people knowing that there's an environment of trust. And we haven't even touched on the failure piece, because I'm a huge advocate of that as well, of creating an environment where people know it's okay to fail, but fail quickly, and don't fail catastrophically. But if you're going to make a mistake, it's fine. Do it. We learn from that's how our best learnings kind of come.
And
So
I think there is a bit of a mindset. So I talk to lots of organisations who measure attrition. We measure retention. It's exactly the same measure.
Yeah.
It's just a much more positive conversation if you're talking about why we've retained 96% of our employees, as opposed to why we lost 4. And I think all of it is just about that mindset of not just focusing on the negative. Don't focus on the interview when they leave. Focus on the people who've stayed. Don't focus on the attrition of staff. Focus on the retention of staff. I think if you build that into your measurements, change your KPIs, it just changes your mindset, and it changes your outlook, and it changes your conversation.
It's almost glass half full versus glass half empty, like life approach, isn't it? But honestly, I love it. I love it. Because I'm on board, but I don't think I've ever had anybody or engaged, spoken with anybody who's had it woven through the fabric so well of the business. So yeah, look, we've come to the end, but I just want to continue with the kind of theme of last guest leaving a question. So Lucinda Reader was my last guest, and she has. I think actually this is a really, really great question for you, based on everything that we've just spoken about. So Lucinda's question was, who or what has shaped your leadership style and why? And I think it's great for you, just based on this kind of refreshing mindset of everything we've just spoken about. That surely must have come from somewhere. So I'm curious. So thank you, Lucinda, for leaving this question. So yeah, Paul.
Yeah, no, thank you, Lucinda. I'm curious as well. So I guess there's a couple of things I'd say. I've had the absolute privilege to work for some incredible people who have taught me so much, who have trusted me in situations that, let's be honest, I left school at 16, went straight into work, have no qualifications, didn't go to university, haven't followed a natural career to a CEO. But people have trusted me to do those roles. And arguably, I've never quite been competent to do any job I've ever been employed to do. And I think that just comes down to people seeing something in individuals and giving them that chance. And I think a big part of how I've been shaped is just learning from great people. I think the flip side, I've had the absolute misfortune of working for some horror shows of managers who, I suffered a lot of prejudice when I was younger. I was running a team of 200 people at 19 or 20. Lots and lots of people didn't ever feel like I should have been in that position. Lots of people, one of the first questions I get is, where'd you go to university? I haven't got a degree. Oh, you're a chief exec. And I think there's still, I think prejudice can really help shape you. I will work hard to, we should always be inclusive. We should be incredibly diverse. Nothing should ever be used as a prejudice against anyone. I guess I suffered that a lot, and that shaped me to just focus on actually demonstrating the value I can bring, working in an environment where I was able to do that, not whether I've got letters after my name, whether I'm qualified, whether I'm, whatever else it might be. So I think I just have a posh job title. Yeah, I don't have any qualifications. I'm not particularly academic. I can't do the vast majority of jobs we employ in our organisation to do, certainly nowhere near to the standard they can. I feel my greatest skill is to build an environment and a culture where people can succeed. And I think that's come from a demonstration of great leadership and a demonstration of horrific leadership, and me finding somewhere in between, which I guess has been pretty consistent. I work with people now I've worked with for over 20 years, and there's an element of loyalty in some of those relationships where people will just run over the hill with you.
Yeah.
I'll always be the first one over, and I never need to check my back because I know my team are there. And I think that's when I think you're in a good culture with a good team and a good organisation.
Yeah. I love that. I think very poetic, the way you just described that at the end. That's probably on a few a few t-shirts somewhere and a few posters. But Paul, thank you so much. I honestly really, really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope the listeners are going to take some good ideas out of it. There's some very simple takeaways in that, but some very profound stuff as well. So Paul, thank you so much.
No, appreciate your time, Martin. And yeah, been a great opportunity. It's not often you get to kind of sit and reflect personally, so I appreciate the opportunity to do that today.